Good afternoon. Welcome to Small Town Underground. Roy Hambrick here. And today, this is a special episode. I've got a guest with me named Bobbi Wilkey, and she's from Catoosa County, Georgia. And she's known around Catoosa as the Chicken Lady. A lot of people talk about how just one person can't make a change. You need an army. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true, and that one person can make a difference, as we're about to explore in the chicken wars of Catoosa County, where Mrs. Wilkey stood up for her rights and identified some things that needed to be changed. And basically, it created a war that we're going to get into. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Roy.
Yes, ma'am. So thank you so much for coming in. I really want to explore this story of the chicken wars with you. And I think we should start with exactly where you came from. You moved here from out of state. Mm-hmm. And so I want to share the audience to share how you came to Catoosa County. So
okay. Well, so I'm not from California, but we did move there right after college.
Okay.
My husband and I and our son. He was a baby at the time, and we lived there for 10 years.
All right.
And we just saw it progress, or I guess digress, into the homeless population got so big and out of control. The traffic was out of control. The taxes were out of control. And just like how much you had to pay to live there was just astronomical. So we were there. We were homeschoolers in California and had a great homeschooling group there that we loved, and community and church and everything that we loved there. And then my husband's company that I did accounting for got sold, and they fired everyone except for him. And they said, you have a month to train all these new accountants, and then you have to leave.
Right.
So we had a month to look for a new place to work. And he had a few job offers there in California, but I felt God telling me to get out, to run. And so I said, no, absolutely not. You need to look somewhere else. So there was a Japanese manufacturing company in Dalton, Georgia, and they were looking for an American Japanese-speaking accountant, which my husband fits the bill for.
Gotcha.
So they moved us out, and we found a house in Tunnel Hill, Georgia. And so that is how we came to live here.
So basically, you were living in California, and you were kind of living through all of the things that we kind of see on TV, how the liberal ethos and principles and laws in place were just creating so much craziness all around you. You had to get out of that atmosphere, right?
Yeah. So like in California, I mean, you can see like that the policies, like the Democrat policies, they don't work.
Gotcha.
And then they just like keep going further and further into them, but they don't work. And as someone who's lived in the big city with all Democrats, I was like, this does not work. I came from a conservative family. My parents were conservative. My dad, I used to knock doors with my dad.
Wow.
So for Republicans. And so, the policies, they don't work. And so it was not safe for our children anymore. We had like homeless people. They were knocking on our doors all the time. They were, walking through our church and our parking lot of our church. And they were, like handcuffed to our back fence and things like that.
Wow.
And
That's
I guess I should clarify, like homeless people, they're not always bad, but in LA, like county, it's a massive drug problem that they have. So these people are all like very high, and they will hurt you, and they won't even remember it later. Wow. And you call the police, and the police don't come because so it just wasn't a safe place to raise our 5 children anymore. And so, I felt God telling me to leave.
Wow. I mean, I'm a transplant myself. I know I have family out in California, and they're conservative. It's a hard place to live with conservative values out there. I come from I was born in Chicago myself, so I know what it's like to move to these like a small town and kind of be an outsider, and I'm sure that you get looked at a lot of times. So, oh, you're from California, so you got to watch what these people do. And
yeah, I think people automatically assume that I'm a Democrat and I've come to like take over Catoosa County or bring my Democrat beliefs here, but that's not. Right. I mean, I consider myself a refugee, a California refugee, and I guess I was so young when I moved to California. I was 21 when I moved there. And I had no, I was 23. I was 23. So I had no idea, like, really what the politics meant, right? And so, but by the time I left, I really understood it, and I did not want to live there. So
Gotcha.
I guess that the thing that was disappointing moving to Catoosa County was I expected to come to a small conservative town and for the politicians to be, you know, morally better and for the all that sort of thing to be better as it was Republicans. But then I just came to find out that they on a smaller scale was the same things were happening there.
Right. So you moved out of the big city, you got away, you wanted your independence, you wanted to come out here in the rural area and raise your family. So you moved to Tunnel Hill. So how does that go? How did that go? What did you think when you got here?
Okay, so I was really grateful that there were blue skies. There are not blue skies in California.
Right.
So they're all gray all the time. They're always smoggy. And you can't see any stars there. So my kids love to look at the stars now. And the clouds, like we literally don't have white fluffy clouds there.
Wow.
It's like just all smog all the time, and it smells bad. And actually the air here smells so good. So that's something that I really love. And the green trees is something that's so different than in California.
Right.
So I really appreciate the dark green and the fall leaves and stuff like that.
Right.
It's so beautiful here.
Okay, it is. I've been to those cities before. I know a lot of people have. It's a completely different contrast. So let's talk. How did this chicken war start? What happened with this chicken war?
Okay, so when we moved here, my husband had picked out this house for us, and I was staying with family at the time in Utah when I was waiting to move here.
Okay.
And he was looking for a house for us. So you don't want to move somewhere when you have 5 kids and you have nowhere to live. So my husband is looking for a house. I was searching online, and he'd go tour him with a video for us, and we found our house in Tunnel Hill, Georgia. And then when I got here is I signed all the papers, right? So I could move in. They signed lots of papers to buy the house, and the very last paper they hand us is an HOA form. And my husband and I were both like, what? There's an HOA? You did not tell us there's an HOA. And that wasn't like a big thing in California, so we didn't know.
Right. We
didn't know there would be an HOA. So we signed it not expecting it at all and not understanding what it was. So then but one of the main reasons we moved here, I wanted to have like a country life, right? And I wanted to have farm or and homestead and things like that. Right. So in California and Utah, the places that we've lived, you can have chickens in your backyard. And, you know, in California, we'd always hear, you know, like the peacocks yelling and things like that. So it hadn't occurred to us it would be like against the zoning code, so you're not allowed to have them. But we did have the HOA. So then we talked to the HOA president in our neighborhood, and we asked him about it. And he said, look, the HOA hasn't been active for years. Half the people don't even pay. You know, actually, lots of people were never even given the HOA form. So we were lucky that we even were given them right when we moved in. And he said, no one in this neighborhood is keeping all of the laws, like the HOA laws. So I would just ask your neighbors if they feel like it's okay, but the HOA isn't going to bother you about it. Okay. So we went to our immediate next door neighbors. We asked them, and they said it was fine. And so then we got some chickens.
Sure.
Okay. So eventually the HOA president, he came to our door and he said, hey, I'm getting divorced. We're moving out. And I'm just going to give you the stuff, and you can be the HOA president. And
so you went around, you talked to your neighbors, you wanted chickens, they were not enforcing anything, and then you end up with the HOA papers yourself. Okay?
Yeah. So he had just been given the papers by the last president because no one was active in the HOA. Okay. So he just came. We were the only people that he knew. So he just came and gave them to my husband, and he gave us like this file form full of checks that he had never cashed. Right. So half the people weren't paying, half the people had paid, but he had never cashed a check. So like they had saved enough money in there to pay the guy to mow like the centerpiece of lawn. Right. And that's all that he was just paying them every month to mow the lawn. And that's all he was paying for with the money. So we went down to the bank and then switched my husband's name to be the president in charge of the account, and we cashed all the checks and put it into the savings. And then I was like, look, all these people are living in an HOA. None of the rules are being followed. We might as well just dissolve the HOA or just change it to rules that people actually want to follow.
Right.
And for me, in mind, was being allowed to have a basketball hoop and being allowed to have chickens.
Right.
And for other people, there were things that they wanted to change, but those were the two things that I wanted to change. So I rallied everyone up in the neighborhood. We had already had chickens at that point, right? I rallied everyone up in the neighborhood and had them come over, and we talked about changing the rules.
Okay.
And there's this one lady who came into my house. I had met her like maybe 1 or 2 times before because her dog had died, and so we brought her cookies and carts for her dog.
Okay.
And that's the only time I had really met her. And then she came into my house in like a big huff, and she was very angry. And I didn't understand why she was angry. But when we started talking about changing the rules, I said I wanted to be allowed to have chickens. And she just got so angry and said she didn't want her reputation like tarnished by living in a neighborhood that had chickens.
Oh, my Lord. Okay.
So anyway... So she was mad, but she was in my house. She had lived in the neighborhood, I don't know how long, maybe a few months, and she didn't know that I had chickens already. So clearly they weren't bothering her.
Right.
She lived across 2 streets and then down like 4 houses or something. So she didn't live super close to me.
Gotcha.
Anyway, I didn't tell her that night that I had chickens. Anyway, a couple months later, I was homeschooling my kids in my sunroom in my house, and I noticed that my side gate was open and I saw a couple chickens wander out. So I went to the back and grabbed my chicken feeder and I shook it, and they followed me back in.
Gotcha.
And then as I'm doing that, this lady's friend drives by.
Ah, I see. Okay.
So then a couple days later, I have a different neighbor who just comes and pounds on my door at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
And he's like, hey, I was just calling the zoning to talk to them about the standing water issue we have at the bottom of the neighborhood. And the lady just starts yelling at me and tells me that she knows that we have chickens in our neighborhood and they're coming down to hand out tickets.
Oh,
he's like, so hide your chickens. And I was like, okay. So I grab all my chickens into my big dog kennel and I drive them to my friend's farm.
Okay.
And then I open my door and I have my storm door closed. And then I'm just waiting for the zoning to come to my house. And I have 2 dogs. And so anytime, like if you drive by my house or my dogs know.
Right.
And they let me know. And anyway, come 3 o'clock, I look at my door and I have a ticket like
really
taped to my door. And my dogs they were so sneaky. We were waiting with the door open for these people. And I do not know how they did it, but they sneakily taped that right to my door.
Really? So nobody contacted you personally. You found out from a neighbor who happened to go down and talk to a rep somewhere. And then
he was calling on the phone.
Yeah. Oh, he was on the phone and they were, so you've not been contacted about this at all. Okay.
No. So they just leave it, and it's a warning that I have 10 days to remove my chickens, or I'll be fined up to $1,000 a day for keeping undomesticated animals on my property. And then it's then it's written in chickens, like in parentheses. And so I was mad. I went down to the zoning and I, gave them a piece of my mind, and they're like, "You're not talking to the right person. You have to talk to the commissioners."
Of course.
We emailed the zoning, and then we're like, we didn't even have chickens on our property. You didn't even come and look.
Right. Nobody even contacted you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So why don't you come and see what, anyway. So then eventually I end up like at a commissioner's meeting.
Okay. And
I asked them for help with this issue.
Okay.
And all the commissioners say that they're going to help me.
All right. Okay.
So at the time, Larry Black was commissioner chair and Benita Hollander was on there. And Benita talked to us afterward, gave all my girls hugs. One of my girls gave her a bracelet that she had made.
Right.
And she said, I promise you girls, I'm going to help you get your chickens back. And she told
Right.
us how she had chickens.
Yes, I
and she
read that in
loved
the article. She was a chicken lover and knew how you felt.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. And she actually lived on a residentially zoned property.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Okay.
So, but eventually Benita just got rid of her chickens.
Uh-huh.
And she had a garden in her side yard, which is actually is written in the UDC that you can't do that.
Oh, wow.
And she got rid of her garden in her side yard.
Whoa.
So I guess I'm more of a fighter than Benita is.
I guess so. So you take this problem after you're being told where to go, and so they're sympathetic. They're going to work with you, right?
They say that they're going to help me.
Okay.
Then I met at that meeting a couple different people there, like Nick Ware and Donna Evett, and all those people, and they're willing to help me. And then we start spreading the word on Facebook, and it just blows up.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, that's what happens. I keep going to the commissioners and I keep asking them if they're going to help me, and then eventually I start to understand that they're not going to help me. Mm-hmm. And eventually, well, they say, oh, well, we're going to help you write a law so that you can have chickens.
Right. So let's pause for a second there. So was there even an ordinance against chickens in the first place?
So we started looking at the UDC, and we realized that there actually is no law against having chickens. Okay. There's no ordinance in the UDC that you can't have chickens.
All right.
So what they had written on there is that you can't keep undomesticated animals. So then a chicken is legal. A legal definition of a chicken is a domesticated bird. Okay. And legally, you can't just change the definition of a word.
Right.
So they can't do that. A chicken has been domesticated for 10,000 years. So they actually have no law in there. Wow. I haven't, sometimes, I don't know if I've told you this, but like, they actually, when they created zoning in 1992 or something for Catoosa County, they had written an ordinance against chickens.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they had the director of the zoning rewrite the zoning laws, and he left that out.
Really? So they did originally have something, but it's gone. Okay.
Yeah, so I think it was in the early 2000s he had left that out.
Okay.
So it wasn't in there. There was no ordinance. So I said, and actually when I was at the commissioner's office, there was one of the public defenders was there. He was asking for more money. And I had not ever gotten my chickens back. They were living at a farm with my friend because I was waiting for them to say that I could have them.
Right.
And one of the public defenders was like, hey, you are completely right on this. Go get your chickens back because they can't do anything about it. Right. Okay. So I went and got my chickens back a few months later.
All right.
So I put them back in my yard and.
Wow.
Anyway, so even their own employees were saying that they were wrong, in the wrong.
Right. Okay. So here you are. You're in contact with the commissioners. You've gotten your chickens back. So what happens next?
Okay. So the commissioners they're not gonna help me. They start Benita called me to the local paper. She called me the local troublemaker.
The local troublemaker. Wow.
So because I'm standing up for my rights.
Sure.
So, and they shouldn't see they are serving me, right?
Exactly.
And they're seeing me as an enemy instead of serving me.
And they never even contacted you directly or anything about this.
No.
Wow. Okay.
So eventually all these people start backing me up. So the commissioners say, okay, we're going to write, after a year's time, mind you, of me going to a meeting once a week for a year, they say that they're going to write an ordinance so that we can have chickens. They're so gracious, right? Okay. But all this time I'm saying, where is the ordinance that says I can't have chickens? And they're like, oh, we're going to find it. I'm like, it's not that long of a document.
Really?
And I'm like, what? And it's interesting because I don't think any of the commissioners had ever actually read the UDC. So they didn't know it. So the commissioners, they said, we want you guys to help the zoning commissioners write a law that allows people to have chickens, but with some restrictions on it so it doesn't get out of hand.
Okay.
And mind you, I think probably a third of Catoosa County probably has chickens.
No doubt. No doubt.
So, I mean, we're in a rural county. People have chickens already.
Sure.
And we already have like laws that can help you, like nuisance ordinances and stuff.
Exactly.
So
it's all there already.
Yeah. So like the nuisance ordinance, what actually my neighbor could have done is like what she did is she emailed the zoning and she said, oh, my neighbor has chickens. And then they sent a person out and gave me a warning, right? That I was going to have a ticket. So then how the nuisance ordinance works, if that's what they were using, is it actually says that you have to have 3 signed affidavits from 3 different households in the neighborhood, and then they can come give a ticket. So they didn't even follow their own protocol.
They tried to serve you without even following the rules. Okay.
Yeah. So they even if they were using the nuisance code, they weren't using it correctly. But that's one thing that we kept telling them. I'm like, you already have this. You have the nuisance like codes that you can use.
Right.
So if the chickens, like, I'm not saying a chicken can't be a nuisance, because it definitely could be.
Sure.
If you had chickens running all over the neighborhood and pooping all over and being loud and obnoxious. But the thing is that I had those chickens for probably a year before anyone knew that I had chickens.
Sure, right.
That I hadn't told, because they were in a privacy fence and they were kept clean and maintained and everything like that. So my neighbor that came to my door and told me, he only knew that because I had given him eggs.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah,
wild.
they weren't a nuisance. So, and they aren't following their own laws. So anyway, they said they were going to help us write a new ordinance with the zoning commissioners. But instead, what they did is they had one of the county lawyers copy like a zoning code from a county near Atlanta. And it said you could have 3 chickens. It was very restrictive. Right. And I mean, the people that have helped me, like on the GOP and stuff, they are like research champions. And they found that they're like, oh, this is from this county in Atlanta. So like, this is not, and actually was such a bad ordinance that they didn't even pass it in Atlanta because it was too restrictive.
Okay. So they ask you to help write an ordinance, and then they bring you some sort of copied ordinance that didn't even get passed where it originally was written for.
Because it was poorly written.
Wow.
So when the zoning chairman had said to us, and he was friendly towards chickens, he said, ask for twice as much as what you actually want. So we asked for 24 hens and a rooster or something. And then they come back with this law, and they're like, this is what we wrote, you can have 3. And we were like, what? This doesn't make any sense. Right. So like the rule of thumb is that you have to have, like, you should have 2 chickens for each person in your household. Okay. So I have 5 children and a husband, so I would really need like 14 chickens. Sure. Then we tried to make it, more reasonable. We said 12. Gotcha. Not everybody has 5 children.
Right, I got you.
Yeah. Okay. So we said 12, and then
that's common sense, reasonable. Okay.
So they said they want 3. So even the zoning commissioners thought it was unreasonable. They asked them to write the law. They said, no, we won't pass it because it's not reasonable. Wow. So our commissioners went past them and wrote one that said that you could have 8 chickens. And they also included a new definition of livestock. They included like new things in like the agricultural zoning. So if you look at the new UDC laws that are still in effect now, it says that like if you're on agricultural land, you can have as many chickens as you want, but you cannot sell your fertilizer or your eggs. And you can't have a sign up that says that you have fresh eggs.
Really? Wow, that's kind of crazy to me.
But they don't enforce it. And I'm wondering if it's because it caused such a stink. Right. I think that they're just scared to enforce it.
Well, obviously, it doesn't seem like to me that the commission board was, they was very inept on working with the people. They never sat down with you and tried to sit at the table to do this. I mean, what's going on here? They just bypass everybody and wrote their own ordinance.
Well, they said that they were going to, and they said, turn yours in and tell us, what you want. And then they disregarded the whole thing. Wow. So, and they kept saying, like, we're going to show you the ordinance that says you can't have chickens, but they could never point to one that They said that they had because they didn't have one.
Right. So this whole time, and they're calling you a troublemaker for something that wasn't even a law or an ordinance to begin with. So,
yeah.
Wow.
So actually, they were the ones that were breaking. They were breaking the law by giving a ticket for something for an ordinance that didn't exist. And if you said, "Oh, well, we were using the nuisance law," which actually would be a great law to use for chickens, I think.
Right.
They didn't follow the protocol for the nuisance law because they didn't get the 3 affidavits signed for it.
Wow, that is wild to me.
Yeah, so they all have like this. They're all like, "Well, we don't want there to be a fight. So we don't want you to know who did it. They did it anonymously." And you're like, "That's not what the law says you could do."
Right.
Like, and she's causing the fight because she's the one. She's just worried about her reputation, even though it has nothing to do with her.
Man.
So
where does all of this stand today?
Okay, so that law, the zoning ordinance is still there.
Okay.
Right. And they changed the livestock definition. They added in all this stuff about you can have 8 chickens if you're residentially zoned.
Okay.
And you have under an acre. And then you can have 12 chickens if you have over an acre and you're residentially zoned. You can have as many chickens as you want if you're A1, but you can't sell your eggs.
Wow.
Right. So, and then they also outlawed they named every animal they could that you couldn't have livestock on your residentially zoned property because they don't want anyone to have goats or pigs as pets or anything.
So they just went ahead and covered themselves for future wars.
Yeah. So I think it's in there for the future.
I see.
But it was interesting because you really find out about the commissioners. They have no intention of working for the people.
Right.
And they are there working for their own interests. And when the news goes out about it, they're saying, "Look at these commissioners. They're so good. They're letting you have 8 chickens. They're so gracious." But what really happened is the commissioners are putting a restriction and a tax on having chickens.
Right.
And they're not wording it that way because they don't want you to think of the commissioners that way.
Of course.
And the commissioners, I literally saw Chuck Harris raise his hand to raise our property taxes. But if you ask Chuck Harris if he raises your taxes, he'll say he did not. Right.
Yeah, we have a pretty bad systematic breakdown with people. What you've done here, it seems like we're having a battle with the commissioners or our leadership, because if you bring these things to light, you automatically get targeted as a troublemaker, right? Somebody who's fighting them. When in all actuality, you're just trying to make sure that you can live freely on your own land and do things. And it amazes me that there wasn't even any rules that you broke in place. It seems to me you went above and beyond with the HOA. Everything was fine. And they are the ones that started this war because they started to come after you without even telling you.
Well, I think they just expect people to lay down and be like, "I'm so sorry, I won't do that." But I guess that's not in my personality to do that. Like, if I see something's unfair, I'm going to be like, "No, we're not doing that." I always say, I'm a rule keeper as long as it's a good rule.
Got you. Yeah. That's amazing. So what do you think moving forward now? Do you see that the communication is going to get any better with the commissioners, or?
Well, I've only seen it get worse. And I guess it kind of opened my eyes to, I was expecting to move here, into a small conservative town with Republicans and be like, "Oh, the laws are so good. The people are so good and the lawmakers are good." But come to find out, it's just they're corrupt, but maybe just on a smaller scale.
Right.
And they are, fooling us in the news all the time. So it's like with the GOP stuff.
Oh, yes.
They're saying, "Oh, the GOP won't let you vote for who you want to vote for." And that is that's the wording that they're using all the time. Well, Vanita ran as a Democrat 4 different times in a row for coroner, right? And then she realizes she can't win as a Democrat. So she needs to change over to be a conservative. But she really has no conservative values. All of those commissioners voted on raising our taxes except for Charlie, right? And Charlie also voted for the property rights of the chickens, right? So when the commissioners went and said you have to go and have the GOP certify you as a Republican, right? they wouldn't certify them because they weren't living by the Republican values.
Exactly.
They weren't saying you can't run. They were saying you can't run as a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely. Freedom of association.
They forced them to do that. They took them to a judge who, mind you, had recused himself from Larry Black's 5th divorce because he said he was too close of friends with him. And yet he'll give the GOP excessive fines, which is also, against our laws.
Right. Well, when you look at all this, like you said, coming into a small town and it's, I think we have talked about this before the interview, being in a small town versus a big city, how, the way things work, you kind of explain that one.
Yeah. So like when I lived in LA, I didn't tell you this story. I was driving and I was going to Beverly Hills. My husband worked in the middle of Beverly Hills. Okay. And I was driving and I was in my lane to turn left, and Beverly Hills is like very crowded. And there's this like super expensive $100,000 car coming down in my lane. And he's not supposed to be in my lane, but he's skipping all the traffic because he's more special than everyone else.
Gotcha.
And I won't move for him because I'm in my lane. So he has to stop and wait and get back in, and he throws a banana peel at my car.
Oh my goodness.
And you can behave that way because you're never going to see that person again, right? So everywhere you go, the store, the park, you're not going to see the same person twice. So you can behave terribly and no one will know. And that is why in LA you are treated very poorly. Okay. But then here I drive a big black van. Everybody sees that van. They know it's me. And if I drive rudely, then people are going to know, oh, Bobbi Wilkey is driving rude. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when you go to the store, you behave kind, and you go everywhere you go, you're going to see that same person. Every time you go to the store, you're going to see that same person.
Right.
So it's interesting to me here that we have these commissioners that people have known, and that's the thing. Like when I say things, oh, she's not from here, so we can't trust her. But you have like people that have been in politics all this time. They never say what they're going to do. Like they never do what they say they're going to.
Right.
They're living immorally, and you've known them since high school, so you're going to vote for them either way.
Well, sure. Yeah, I think we have, it's what a lot of people refer to as a good old boy system. I mean, really, it is. They grew up with each other. They get these positions of power, and they want to keep all their friends in power, and they don't seem to adhere to their own rules when it comes to policy or, like conservatism. We expect when we elect somebody who calls themselves a Republican to vote Republican, to think Republican, right? Conservative values and principles. And I think that we have an issue where a lot of people, they don't follow those principles.
Yeah, they're Republican in name only.
Exactly.
But they aren't following. They don't even know they're Republican.
Right. That, and they're always wanting to hold the public accountable for the rules, yet they don't hold themselves accountable to the rules.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So we have to, that wasn't even a rule that you can have chickens.
Right.
Right. And they won't follow their nuisance code, which is what they had written me up for. They won't follow that.
Right.
And then they're also not following, there's all sorts of things our commissioners are doing that if I were doing, I'd be going to jail.
Sure.
So they're buying property for very little and then selling it to Catoosa County for lots of money.
Yeah, exactly.
They're also the guy who was the director of the zoning, the zoning department got fired for having an affair with one of his employees. And yet he just can walk over, I think, to Walker County and get a job over there for the same job. So you better watch out for him.
Well, zero accountability. Again, and I don't think that people like you or me are asking, we don't have our hands out for anything. We're just wanting things to be right. We want things to be transparent, hold people accountable, do the right thing. And so many times, more than not, things are done as they see fit, but we're always the ones held to a standard, right?
Well, they also they're controlling the media, right? Like how many times have you seen Chuck Harris on the Judy show? He's on there every other day or something.
Right.
And he can just tell everybody everything that he wants, but it's not true. I saw him vote for higher taxes, but he'll tell you he did not.
Exactly.
And then they're controlling the narrative right now about about the GOP takeover and about the school board and about all that stuff. But like, do you want like the same people? You want the commissioners, you're like lawmakers in charge of who's running and everything like that. Like that's who they went and they all got in as delegates.
That's right.
Right? These same people, they want to be in charge of everything in every single fraction of our town. Right.
And the GOP, that's a volunteer group of people, right? The watchdogs, basically, right?
Yeah.
Holding accountable. And it's a quote that I got from the story about you. They said when they raised property taxes, they never had that many people attend, but they did for chickens. So I think we have a problem, which is no doubt we love that, you know, that so many people stood up. But I think we need more community involvement, right? Because we're being overtaxed to death. We're being taxed in our school systems. It becomes this sort of merry-go-round of finger pointing. You can never get any kind of accountability to anybody, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the thing about like just 2 years ago, our school board, I don't, do people have short memories? Because they just raised our taxes 34%. Our commissioners had already raised it. So since I've lived here 5 years, my property taxes have gone up 50%.
Yep.
And that's a lot.
That's a whole lot.
So then they also approve Splosh again. And then they're like, oh, if you don't approve this, then our kids aren't going to have enough stuff in school.
Right.
Well, how are you managing our funds? Because you were fine before the 30%, tax raise.
Exactly.
And then also we had, like, we don't know, it was I think it was 11 million.
Somewhere around 11.
11 or 12 million, right? Of our excess funds for our school system. And then in just 2 years, it went down to 2 million.
Right.
And they don't know where that went.
Right.
And they won't
Nobody
tell
knows,
us.
right?
Yeah.
That's the story I'm getting. They don't know where.
Yeah. And so then when Mitchell Horner says, I want to have an audit to figure out where that money went, and now our stuff is going, they're saying, he's so bad, he's trying to take our money.
Right.
And like Mayor Millwood, he says, these people want to take away, don't forget the GOP are the same people who are trying to take away your voting rights.
Right.
By saying that they can't run as a Republican, right? But they could have ran as an independent. But what Mitchell Horner actually wants to do is he wants to just pass legislation that you can vote on if we can lower the age of the taxes down to 67.
Exactly.
And if you can vote on having an audit. And why not let the people vote on it?
Right.
So they're actually the people who want to restrict your voting rights. They want to take that away from you.
Yes. I never could understand that. Especially if you're a new commission board, why wouldn't you want to come in and audit your position, audit everything around you so that you could just start over from scratch, some sort of forensic audit. But a lot of times they fight against this. And of course, your school board, are fighting against an audit, right?
Yeah, but if you've been doing everything right, then why would you fight against an audit? And our commissioners are in the same boat. They keep hiring the same audit company to do their audit, and that's actually illegal too.
Right.
Like they have to have a new audit company, and they don't. They've had the same one, I don't know, for like 9 years or something.
Right.
So they need to have they need to have an audit.
Yes, I agree. And so, you're highlighting all of these, well, I mean, they're problems, obviously, but you're highlighting all of these things within the leadership, the county leadership. And so that's why I think they're calling you a troublemaker, right? Why do you think that these people just can't sit down at a table and try to get to point A from point B instead of all this complex system or rigmarole that they use? I mean, it seems like it's a money game to me.
Yeah, I think they're making so many deals, and you have to have power and money, and that's the thing is, I don't know. It's people like Nick Ware. He's not gonna bend to that. He's not gonna.
No,
he's gonna run for commissioner, and he's gonna actually stand and stick with the Constitution. And the same thing with Joanna Hildreth. She can't be bought. And so that is the problem with these people is they won't do what they say,
right? Because
they actually believe in freedom. They actually believe in our Constitution,
right? And
they're moral people. And I think our commissioners are morally corrupt as they're in a spiritual, like,
Probably a spiritual
deficit.
warfare. Yeah, maybe. I'm right.
Yeah, they're sick. So they're so
Gotcha.
sick spiritually. And so I think that's where the big problem is like they are only looking out for number one. Instead, they're actually hired. We've hired them to look out for us, and they're not looking out for us.
Yeah, and it also begs to differ. You know, they tried to take control of the GOP. Will they show up at more meetings? Will they show up and sit down with the citizens and try to bridge a gap here, you know?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder.
I mean, so they, at the GOP convention, like, well, so at the caucus, we had a past commissioner who came and he was in my area, right, in my precinct, and he came, he tried to be in charge. We didn't vote for him. Good. And he left. And that's the same thing that was at the convention is all these people came. They lost by 9 votes. Thank God. Right. Oh my gosh, it was a miracle. And they were all rude. Were you there?
No, I didn't get to be there.
Yeah, they yelled and rude, and they were rude and hollered the whole time. If I behaved like that in a commissioner meeting, you'd better bet I'd be arrested.
You know, it's funny. Yet again, you talk about the way that we're supposed to act and the way that we're supposed to be. Yet again, you had that kind of atmosphere set up by those very same people who are calling you a troublemaker for questioning why you can't have chickens. Well,
and that's the thing. You're like, for me, questioning authority, that is a troublemaker. And I guess that's something that is not allowed anymore, I suppose. But
it certainly seems that way. So I think a lot of the commission boards around here are starting to shut people off. You know, they don't want us asking questions. I mean, again, when I ask questions about things, I'm not coming with my hand out. I don't want a seat. I don't want, to the breadcrumb. I want to make things right for the community.
So they are acting like that is what we are doing. But, I mean, they are the ones with their hands out raising our taxes all the time, right? Trying to get more money.
Like the school boards.
Yeah.
Why are our school boards not focusing on running a budget that doesn't need an E-SPLOS instead of desperately voting it in every couple of years? I don't get that.
And their boss is telling them, you need to show up at all these meetings and get this passed.
Right.
So their boss, who makes $193,000 a year, plus he has an $80,000 car given to him, and yet his teachers are making around $40,000 a year. So he's telling them, you need to vote in more taxes or you're not going to ever get a raise, all the while he gets a raise. And if you think about what the commissioners are telling us before when they raise our property taxes, you need to do this because our firemen, they need raises. Well, I have a friend who was a fireman and he did get a raise and he got 67 cents raise a paycheck.
Oh my God.
So that is like, that 67 cents, I'm sure it helped him, right? So that is what they're saying. But they can also, like Benita wrote in her own raise. Like these people can write in their own raises too. It's more like $20,000 instead of, Wow. So they're very.
We have some problems, don't we?
Yeah, and I think that is what Catoosa County, you have this band of watchdogs, and it's the GOP. And then you have the wolf in sheep's clothing, and they're pointing out the watchdog and saying, look at these guys. They're making all sorts of trouble for us over here.
That's the constant narrative.
Most of the Catoosa County is siding with the wolf in sheep's clothing.
Well, it's because they're not informed and they're not paying any attention. Why would anybody? I see a lot of people defending the property tax hikes are you kidding me? The amount of taxes that we pay on a daily basis for every aspect of our life. Why would anybody want another tax?
So we pay like close to what my sister lives in Finland, right? And we pay close to the same amount of taxes that my sister pays in Finland, which is a socialist country. Only they're getting, free healthcare.
They're getting,
and they have the best schools in the entire world.
Absolutely.
And here's our schools, like 40-something% of our kids aren't up to reading and math standards.
Right.
And they're still graduating, 96% of them.
That's right.
And they're very proud of that. But I'm like, if you're graduating 96% of our kids and almost half of them can't read, that's a problem.
That is a huge problem. So, well, we obviously have problems all across the board, but I think that the more community involvement we can get, the more people that we can just get to ask questions, come to the table, try to figure out real solutions instead of just letting this complex system continue to roll on. I think the better we're going to be, don't you?
Yeah, well, and if you come to like a GOP meeting and get involved, like you will see very quickly that these people are good-hearted.
Right.
Like they are 100% good-hearted, and they have good intentions, and they're completely volunteer-based.
Right.
Whereas like they're going to these commissioner meetings every week, and they're videoing them. They're at their board of education meetings every week, and they're videoing them, and then they're posting them for you to see.
That's good.
And you're not paying attention, but then you're watching like the lies of the commissioners and the mayor and all these people are posting online.
Right.
And they're half truths.
Right.
So I think that's where the problem is like if you actually came to a GOP meeting, you would see like they're trying to protect you, and they're doing it out of their own pocket.
Right.
And they're trying, but I mean, mainly like, I guess I'm not at these GOP meetings to protect everyone. I'm there to protect my family.
Sure.
And that's why I stood up for the chickens, because I was protecting my family. And I mean, right now, how much is I don't even know how much.
Actually, yeah, it's coming down, but we went through quite a,
they keep doing that.
They keep doing it over and over again. I mean, I know, God, I get eggs almost every week from, I have so many friends that have chickens, you know, so I mean, that's a wonderful thing
so
for me.
You wouldn't know how much they cost either. I literally don't know how much a dozen eggs cost because I don't.
Yeah, you don't have to. That's a form of independence.
Yeah.
You're raising chickens for your family. It's wild that this whole war ever went on. And I tell you, I'm glad to have sat down with you because I've watched this thing unfold and all the narratives and how, you know, again, you've pointed out how the media constantly is on the side of the whoever's in charge, and they have this narrative when it's really nothing like that at all. I mean, literally, there wasn't even anything against what you were doing in the first place. So
yeah, and then they made something against it, and then they frame it in a way that they were the good guys. So I think that's the trick is right now is that they're doing that again and again and again and again, and they're doing it right now with the school board thing. They're doing it right now with like lowering the age of the property tax and things like that, and they're framing it like Mitchell Horner is the bad guy because he hates the schools and he hates children.
That's
and
insane.
Things like that. I'm like, no, he's trying to help the elderly, and he's actually just letting you vote on something. And that is the thing is they're framing it again. They're tricking you they're so tricky.
I know. It's crazy to me to think about that when you're trying to lower the taxes, especially in a country right now where the federal mandate is lowering taxes. All right. How can anybody that's called themselves conservatives not want to jump on board to that in the first place? And they want to turn around and attack you like it's their livelihood. When we get to the point where we're that dependent on the taxing of the people and the property, then that's a tyrannical form of government. And I mean, we obviously have to fight against that every step of the way.
Yeah.
But so all right, I just want to. Where do you see things going in the future now? So the ordinance is in place.
Okay, so I think some things could happen. I think that if someone, we've got our watchdogs watching that ordinance specifically, right? So if someone gets in trouble for it, we're there for them, right?
Right.
And the commissioners can't really enforce it because they wrote it illegally.
Okay.
Right. So it's either going to go into a big lawsuit, which we know Catoosa County doesn't have the money for because they keep asking for more taxes, right?
Right.
So it's either going to go into a big lawsuit, or I think they're going to just wait till it's like all. If we could actually get commissioners in office that are good,
right,
we could change it.
Absolutely,
and that would be because our zoning commissioners are appointed by our commissioners.
Right. Yep.
So if we get good commissioners in, they could appoint people who are like-minded in freedom thinking and property rights, and we could change it. We could change it. But we'd have to get actual freedom thinking good people in that won't just go with. So that's what the problem is. Like when that was voted in, Chuck Harris wrote that law, but then he didn't show up to vote for it. And I'm speculating, but I think that was purposeful.
Right. I read that.
And then Charlie voted against it, and then all of the three of the other ones voted for it.
Right.
So they all voted against your property rights. So Benita Harris, Jeff Long.
Benita Hollander, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Getting them. They're one. Just kidding. Benita Hollander, Jeff Long, and then Larry Black voted against your property rights. And that is the thing, is they are not voting in your interest. They're voting for themselves.
Absolutely.
So I think that we have, like, more people, they need their eyes opened. They need to see that these people do not have their interests in mind.
Right.
So, and I think Nick Ware, he could have won that, but then all of a sudden, how many people ran for that office? All of a sudden, there was like six people running against him, and I think that was purposely done. They're very tricky.
So what would you tell people, how is the best way they can get involved in any of this?
Yeah, I would think come to a GOP meeting and like actually read your ordinances.
Right.
Read what the actual laws are. And then if you come to the GOP meetings, then you can vote for things that you want brought up as laws.
Right.
And like people don't know that. Like you don't know, like that's where the laws start, is right down there at the bottom. So they're never going to get voted on unless people come to the GOP and then you send them to your Republican leaders.
That sounds like a good plan. Get involved. That's what we're doing over here. That's what a lot of people need to do. A lot of people need to wake up and realize that all these things are only going to change when we get the right people in that are listening to the people and have the people's best interest at hand. So.
Yeah. And I think don't just always listen to what the commissioners say and the news say. Like check all of your sources. Read all of the different things about it, because they're always spinning it in their favor.
Right. Amen. We've seen a lot of it. So. Yeah. Well, Bobbi, thank you so much for being here with us, and I appreciate it. And I mean, we've been following the chicken wars for a long time. We're glad you stood up. We hope that we can get more people to get involved and take a stand in the right way. Like you said, they labeled you as a troublemaker when it was exactly the opposite. So this is the only way we're going to get true accountability, transparency, on the same page about how we want our communities to run. And we thank you for standing up for that.
I'm grateful for being here today. And I'm grateful for all the people that stood up with me and helped me, because I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah, that's right. It was a wild experience. I watched it unfold. So, guys, like I said, it only takes one person to stand up and to get involved and to get some skin in the game and to make some real changes. So, thank you again for being with me. And I hope you guys will like this, share this, subscribe. Let's get it out, and let's find those other people that are willing to stand up with us. So until next time, see you later.
The legislature legalized unverifiable voting in 2000.
Like you said to Trump, but they're getting booty.
He said, go out there and rob these houses and bring back the bounty, and then that'll pay your way.
Because Republicans who get endorsements from Georgia carry that they mean anything.
You can't sit on the sidelines any longer. You must get involved in the game. This is your sign.